To the Honorable Judges, His Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm good afternoon. It is an honor and privilege for me to stand here in front of you and bring up a topic under the title of should the government set aside money for public transport? Prior to moving to my argument, allow me to take this time and explain a few key terms which are of great importance to this topic, which are set aside and public transport. So without further ado, let's go into the explanation. So the first key term is to set aside. So it basically means to save up money for later use. And the second key term is public transport. So what it basically means is a system of buses, trains, and so on, and they run at a certain planned period, and the majority, if not all of the people, have access to this. And according to this explanation, we can come to understand that the topic literally means whether the government should save money and invest in public transport. And I stand here before you expressing my stand in support of the idea that the government should definitely invest in public transport based on three main arguments. The first argument is the fact that by doing so, the government can keep their duty, keep their responsibility as the provider of public services. And also they would have the ability to avoid being called a failed state. The second argument is the fact that by doing so, the government can generate the so-called occupational as well as social interactions, which lead to an enhancement in democratization. And the third and final and probably the most important reason is the fact that the government can improve economic growth and economic development by facilitating or improving public transport. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the first argument. So we can see that the government have one of the sole responsibility of the government is to provide public services to the people, including public transport. And that is basically the reason why people elected them in the first place. People want a representative who can push forward their public interests at ease, and one of which is the provision of public transport. Also, by setting aside money for investing in public transport, the government can also avoid being called a failed state. And one of the characteristics of a failed state is the fact that they cannot provide public services to the people, including public transport. And one of the examples would be Somalia. It is being called a failed state by the UN right now because of the fact that they cannot provide public services to the people. And including one of the main aspects of public services that they cannot provide is public transport. That is the first argument. Moving on to the second argument, the reason why the government should set aside money to invest in public transport is the fact that they can generate a so-called social and occupational interactions between and among the people, which then would lead to a further enhancement of democratization. So indeed, ladies and gentlemen, by promoting public transport, the people can interact with each other more frequently, they can commute to work, interact with their colleagues more often, leading to a so-called associational activity and an enhanced sphere of associational life. And this associational life can generate, according to one of the international scholars, Robert Putnam, can generate a so-called social capital. And social capital means the ability of people to accept democracy in the country and the ability of the people who can push forward for the government to promote more welfare as well as democratic values. And for example, the fact that Cambodia is also one of the countries in improving the public transport, and we can see that our democratic value has been improving as well. The third and final reason is the fact that the government can improve economic growth as well as development. So indeed, as people can commute to work more frequently, business can be done in a more efficient manner, investments tend to come in, and a so-called business environment can be generated. For example, you can see Japan. It is one of the leading countries in terms of providing public services to the people, and they are now one of the leading economic superpower in the world. So to sum up, we can see that the government should definitely set aside money to invest in public transport, because by doing so, they can take their responsibility as the provider of public services, avoid being called a failed state. They can also generate the associational activity leading to democratization, and also they can promote, and most importantly, promote economic growth and development. Ladies and gentlemen, according to one of the famous anthropologists, Margaret Mead, she said that we should never, under any circumstances, underestimate the ability of a small group of people to make changes. And in this case, the government is those small group of people, and they can make changes via promoting public transport. Thank you very much.
I'm very curious about the term social democratic interaction. Can you expand what you mean by how public transport can promote social democratic interaction?
Certainly. In fact, if we do improve public transport, people will still use private transportation. And we can deal with it via certain measure, but the two most prominent measure is the fact that we can make public transport cheap or as free, cheap if not free to the public, so that they can use it more frequently and more often. The other methods that we can use is that we can also, well, this might not seem to be a very prominent idea for the rich class or the middle class, is to increase tax on the number of vehicles owned by the families or by individuals. And by vehicles, I'm referring to cars as well as motorcycles. And by doing so, those group of people will try to avoid using or buying those vehicles more frequently and use public transport more often, leading to the better conditions which I have just talked about previously. So when we have a strong public transportation, people will be able to interact with each other more by commuting to work, by commuting to their favorite places, for example, because some of the people do not have the time, do not have the ability to meet up with each other as often due to the fact that they have to spend a lot of money on private transportation. If we can provide public transport to them, they can interact with each other more, and those sort of interactions generate discussions. And they generate discussion, and those discussions lead to a so-called social capital. And according to Robert Putnam, social capital is the ability of the people to express their needs, express their voice more frequently through the interaction with each other, as well as leading to the interaction with the state as well. So when the people discuss, when the people get the ability to interact with each other via the facilitation from public transport, they can somehow generate more demands from the government. They can generate more responsibility for the government so that they can promote democratic value as well as other resources.